welcome on board. Thank you for joining us. I think so. It's very apt to say that we hastily discuss about that what the talent philosophy is looking forward for the future. Looking at it from a lens to say upskill, reskill, and redeploy, right? Uh, Before we start the discussion, I think so what I can also like to just check upon is that is business priorities really changing that much that it demands so many changes that we are hearing from the news? Would you like to say something, start there?
Sure, I absolutely think so. I think we're all aware that the pace of change is absolutely incredible. And hence, it's all about absorbing very quickly what's changing and therefore being nimble and agile to make those downstream changes across business strategy, across products, customers, how do you meet customer requirements, and then, therefore link it back to what HR needs to deliver to the business to meet those changing realities.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. So that then makes me think to another question. So in terms of how business priorities are changing, in terms of how structures are changing, how are we going to be managing the upskillment, reskillment of our talent? And at scale, for that matter.
So as I said, we were talking, we have about 170,000 people across 105 countries. And, post the pandemic, very clearly, the workplace, worker has undergone a great change. Just to give you an example, we were first sitting around each other and leadership was more about command and control. Now it is about ownership, resilience. Learning was always in groups, sitting together and learning, cross learnings, etc. Everything is hybrid. We clearly know that a company like TechM, for example, our customers, like he was saying, customers' expectations are completely changing, right? The digitization process, the kinds of technology, all aware of ChatGPT, so I won't talk about it, but there's many things beyond it also. We have to keep pace, and upskilling, reskilling, training, whatever you call it, has to change. We realize that there are two kinds. One is, of course, the non-technical bit. And what has changed? Today at Tech Mahindra, for example, when we look at leadership, when we look at putting somebody in a place of, let's say, leading our SBU or leading a great competency, we're looking at things like agility. You're looking at things like creative and innovation. We're looking at things like data literacy, emotional quotient, which are clearly important. We are looking at things like collaboration, which was important earlier, but is extremely important now. On the tech side, all of you are aware of it, but things like data analytics, AI, blockchain, metaverse, quantum, 5G. But the interesting thing is this is only for a few weeks, it'll change. And that's the challenge, right? But we have done something very interesting. We have thrown away the training man hours, training man days, getting into a room and doing training. No such thing in Tech Mahindra. Okay. We measure only, so we call it the Coke machine model. So you choose which career you want. We have given you, and we take the entire cost of all the courses. So whether it's technical or non-technical, we have tied up with about 10 to 15 world-class organizations. Courses are free. You upskill, but that has no meaning until you are billed to a customer in the new technology. The moment you get billed, we increase your salary by 30%. So now what happens? The person wants to get upskilled.
That's
the customers want them to get upskilled. And so similarly, even for the company, the cost is a great motivator. So the idea is a pull model rather than a push model into the classrooms.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. So you'd like to add something?
Yes, I just wanted to add on the upskill. So good evening, everyone. Upskilling model that we just shared. So in DBS, there's not only for customer, but the branding itself says live more, bank less. And for employees, it's like live life fulfilled. So we've got certain models and tools which are like iGrow.
Okay.
Hi, okay. Talking about upskilling, iGrow is a model which is a tool which helps an employee to fix his jobs or research his jobs in which is automatically matches which he's upgraded his skills to and where he can go to. So it's aspiration versus the upgrading that you've done for yourself versus the career progression or the aspiration that you want to meet to. And IOK is another tool which is helps the emotional and the counseling part of it, where an employee, it's completely anonymous. Yes, we had all these other tools earlier, but they used to happen in person. And so everything that we talk about has gone through a change. Change is inevitable and only constant. This
Definitely.
all, like shared earlier, that is the only thing that will again go under change. But there are certain things that we can do, like the entire employee life cycle. We all talk about it. In with DBS, we have something called as DDOM, which is data driven operating model, which is nothing to do with business. It's
Okay.
very clear
Okay.
for employees. It sounds very business driven.
Yeah.
But right from the hiring to onboarding to the HRRM relationships, it's all. Yes, there has to be a manual phase because it's HR and it's employee and it's human aspects. You can't drop that. But it has certain cycles in which that it turns around for the DDOM to be giving an employee experience to the person. So that is what.
Beautifully done. I think so. It's becoming more important how we are also looking at the human lens of it, because digitization can only create that much of a connect, right? So, sir, how would we be looking at it to say that if one side we have data available of employee skill sets, what their aptitude is in terms of where they want, as you've been able to measure that, right? If I can
Yes.
assume, but when we also talked about, like Sirs mentioned, that the speed of tech is changing so fast. Earlier, it used to be gestation period used to be somewhere around 5 years. It's now dropped down to 2 years. So, is the pace of upskillment going to be matching up to that?
See, I'm Jay Kumar. I work for Larsen & Toubro. We are predominantly into EPC, engineering, procurement and construction, manufacturing and services. Most of the businesses in infrastructure. We build all the roads, bridges, etc. So huge amount of investment in infrastructure in the last couple of years. And we have secured a lot of jobs. Even our competitors have secured jobs. Not that we, so what if you have got 3 jobs, they would have got 1 job at least. So one is the scale, size, and complexity of the projects have gone up like anything. Never ever you would have thought of a job of 3 billion, that is 25,000, 28,000 crores, one single job of high-speed rail from Ahmedabad to Mumbai. So scale is very huge. So there are at 3 levels you require. Even at a grassroots level, you don't get carpenters, fitters, barbenders, welders for doing the grassroots level job. Then you look at the next level of engineers, precast, concreting, that level of job. Then you look at the leadership who can handle a major projects. So this is one part of the story, just scaling it up. Next part is all these jobs are L1, that is tender. Lowest person will get. So you have to control the cost. You have to bring in efficiency. You have to bring in, so you have gone into digitalization, automation, and most of them. Then now you have to not only getting these job people, but also upskilling them to do the automation.
We will
The
understand.
challenges is multiple, and we are continuously working on that. That's it.
Sure.
Just to make Jeff feel better, uh, in technology, 64% is the people cost, right? And therefore, if I sneeze, the company gets a cold, right? And which basically means, to answer your question in the tech context, you're always catching up. And the beauty is, the differentiation amongst companies is only that you can sense new technology better will be the differentiator. So for example, we all know that, everybody talks about chat GPT, but it's one of the technologies. But even if we talk about chat GPT, some people sensed it before time. But today, whether it's 5G or quantum or meta, I think the challenge really is not to be part of the herd, but the first few weeks, months, and years are going to be the differentiator. And it becomes virtually impossible to buy, so you have to build, because your buying it'll make you absolutely non-competitive from day one. So I would say it's a challenge which is quite serious in the tech sector. We are companies that have done well are the companies that have sensed technology better. Now, like she was saying, banks have changed, retail has changed. You know, I've never been to a bank physically. It's just all internet banking. Retail, I mean, Amazon and the likes, you know, transportation, everything, ticketing is all online. So I'm just saying, as people change their lifestyles and life habits, they're driven by what technology offers them, right? And I can give you one example, and then I'll keep quiet because you haven't spoken yet. But you know, we used to do recruitment and inductions. We do everything on metaverse. And look at the power where you can do an interview of 100 people on metaverse and give them the same immersive experience, which you probably couldn't do even sitting face to face, you know, in this hall. So I'm just saying technology is determining a lot of things. Even tech sector is catching up. And I do believe that we will all have to sense and take some risks to say we will invest ahead of the curve.
Very well said. I think so. That also leads me to the next question very aptly, as you rightly said, of build versus buy. Because I think so, on every leader's mind today is that do I have the, in terms of the different layers, do I have the right talent available in house also or externally as well? So therefore, at what cost are we going to be saying that okay, we'll be ready to buy? If I can invite your thoughts.
No, so, you know, I don't think it's a build versus buy question at all. You know, because I think every organization at some point of time will have to do both. But one thing is certainly sure, that build actually is an imperative for everybody. Buy can be a choice, you know, and really that will depend on the level of maturity of different organizations, the level of availability of different type of skill sets. So, you know, at the start of a journey, suppose, let's just take a bank, because, sorry, not yours, but, you know, we're working with a lot of banks today, where the imperative right now is to build their technology organizations, right? I think gone are the days where a bank is a bank. It's today a technology organization with a banking license. You know,
It's a tech company giving financial solutions.
absolutely a tech company giving financial solutions. So in the, you know, the need to buy is imperative, but you can't do it for a very long time because, as Harsh rightly said, that will make you non-competitive. So you've got to be able to selectively buy, but put in place processes to build at scale, as you rightly said a little bit earlier, because that's the only way to continue to be in the game. And if you are one of those that the sniffer dogs who can do a little bit better sniffing ahead of the curve, little maybe ahead of the game.
That gives the edge.
Yeah.
So
We say something very clear in our company. You better build till you can, and only then buy,
Exactly.
right? And our internal fulfillment went from 36% to 71%.
wow.
And our attrition is the lowest in the country because of that, right? So I think it's very clear. You don't have a choice. You have to build till you say you can't, right? And then you buy.
See, I fully agree with Ryan, right? It has to be both. For example, you take our organization. We built the tallest statue in the world, longest viaduct, the biggest stadium. Everything is the first. Where do I go and pick people from others? You have to train people internally. So we focus predominantly into campus at a grassroots level, build them, and then train them in different phases and bring them up. Very specific areas where we enter into new areas of business. We are entering into green. We are entering into manufacture of electrolyzers. We are manufacturing of batteries. We are entering into data. Some new areas when you enter, we would look at key specialized skills from the market. But at the same time, we intake more of a trainees inside and the freshers and from adjacent skill sets, move them there and then train them and build our own thing. Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to add to that piece in terms of building. So as a part of our learning curve for employees, we believe in 3 E's, which is education, experience, and exposure, rather exposure and experience later. So education is various different educational programs. We have schemes, we have policies which help employees in terms of what they want to study in terms of their passion, but also facilitate on the larger courses that they want to do. We have online tools plus educational tools which are signed up with institutes. So those are the ones for the education. On the exposure side, we have a lot of inter-social media within the organizations. We call them different jargons, T circles and T sprints, that we have lean in circles, where these are social platforms where people come in from the organization to speak on certain topics. It could be well-being, it could be financial well-being, it could be D&I, any of that.
Okay.
And people can join in voluntary to get exposures to certain of these things. So a person can upgrade himself by giving the education what he wants to passionate about. Then we give the exposure around that, and then there are programs like High Post, Stars, and others where there are roles and others which match that up to give them the career progression. So where that the experience comes in.
Lovely.
Yeah.
That makes me think from a different lens also, because when we are giving so much of empowerment to our employees that you have the freedom to choose the career that we want, how we want to learn, and what we want to do, it makes me think that is that actually getting rectified, or are we actually getting an ROI back from the organization standpoint? For an individual, yes, because I'm getting the power of what I want to do. But it's not the we element that's coming in from an organization standpoint. How are we going to be addressing that?
So I have too many seniors here, and they
Very,
all are
very interesting
Yeah.
question. I have been continuously asked this question by my management. We have programs with Harvard, Michigan, all those places. We have a project management institute. So many things are there. Okay, till the certain level you can measure, no reaction level or implementation or immediate superior and other things. But for me, the final measure is like how many of your positions are filled internally. How many of your positions you have moved internally, then recruiting from outside? If that is, if I can, if for example, planning engineers, I can go and recruit from outside. Or do I have a project management institute? I have put certain people through a structured program. Then I move them to a smaller project in planning. Then they are handling a major project in planning. Same in terms of project management. If I can fill most of the internal positions and then compare with the cost, etc., then I can. Otherwise, finding a ROI, return on investment, is very, very tricky process, and it is right from my college days we are talking about this. There is no final solution to it.
So for us, it's extremely important. Now look at this. Every time I go out, I know I pay 50% extra. I hire 15 to 20,000 people a quarter, okay, which you can calculate into 4. Right? Now, if I can upskill, what happens? A, I am cheaper by almost 60-70% cost. But that's not the key. If I have to go out, I have to spend 3 months waiting period for him to bill. I lose 3 months of revenue. When I go from 36% to 71% internal fulfillment, imagine the extra revenue that comes in because I can fill the position in days rather than wait for 3 months. So I think for us, the ROI is measured on a daily basis. We have a huge focus on looking at every aspect of how we can increase our competitiveness. And today, the biggest lever that we have, including all other IT companies, is upskilling.
So, to the answers that they gave, when we talk about ROI, it's all about finance for us. So, you put into the numbers exactly the 3 months loss on the onboarding of an individual today and notice period, or organizations are very clear, it has to be 3 months. That's one piece. The hiring cost, when you're doing it, you have to give an increment on top of that. The other major cost that we lose on is a person doesn't get productive the minute he joins. It's a loss, and the training cost, which again put in number or dollar terms, will give you an exact investment that you've done, plus the productivity of a person normally, even on a sales retail job, starts after second. The best performer also will start putting in after a second month or third month when you actually start generating his incentives and things like that. So it's not 3 months of loss. It's technically 6 months of loss that you've had in terms of getting your revenues. So that's where your ROI is.
I was thinking on the same lines, because one has to get, as a new employee, get comfortable into the culture of the organization, but also get to the culture of the team that they're working in, right? Because if I don't feel comfortable, how will I perform, right? So that begs me to also then think that with so many people, specifically like your large organizations, that does the manager have an ability of as a visibility that how can my team members move into different directions? It's not necessarily it's going to be just vertical, but can they move laterally to some other place as well, so that there is enough exposure and not just the carrot of saying getting a higher salary, but getting to do something different.
So at large scales like Jay and us, it has to be driven by technology. I can tell you, and the massive number of people that are sitting here, I can say that IJPs fail because they are manual. Okay, we introduced about 4 years ago something called Talix, which is on YouTube. You can write Talix, it'll come up. It's the first marketplace of talent. What it does is simple. It's a simple AI tool driven by RPA. It matches skills. So if there's a vacancy, it alerts and it goes around the company and says, these 10 seem to be matching, but it also checks whether you are interested in the job, right? And it gives us. It also allows you to bid for the job of your dream, even if you're not chosen. So if you have your R&R points or reward points, you can bid for a job, and technically, if you're a good performer, you can appear for an interview for any job. But the trick is, you now have people applying and job matching both happening simultaneously in minutes. So we have actually filled a job in 5 hours.
Wow.
Right? But to find that person who's sitting in one part of the world manually is impossible. So I think the trick is, if we have to do it well, we have to do it with technology, and we have to make it a little gamified for people whose skill doesn't match really to apply for those jobs. So I think that probably would be something that I think at least our companies will have to do.
To add to, yes, technology is required. There has to be a platform where an IGP is floated and across immediately people do, and there should be a discipline of releasing also. The other, you have to bring in that culture of thing. More than that, our EVP is first and foremost is pride. Okay, you are building the projects which is of national importance. Okay, you build airports, you do that is one which we attract. And the next EVP is challenging assignments. Okay, he does that airport, and we have a structured process of performance PMS. We call it as each schedule, manpower schedule, workman schedule. So each person, what is his skill set, what is he there, till which time he is in this project. So as soon as it's completed, where is his next project? So it is a quick assembling of teams, do a project, complete that project, then it disassembled and goes to another project. So the skill inventory and the proficiency level is very, very important to see that how we move people across, so that the person also knows once they complete, there's another project, there's another project. So that is how we motivate and retain people.
Okay, sir. So, yeah, I was
Just wanted to add a little bit about the other key prerequisite for making this a success, and he referred to it, is that skills inventory. So many organizations, they do it for certain skill sets which are a little bit more difficult to acquire and all of that. But I think in order to make this really something which anybody in the organization can aspire for, you need to have a very robust skill architecture across the organization, because to identify those adjacencies, and where the more natural progression movements can happen. He said a very important thing, where he said that even if you don't have the skill sets, you can still apply, and that's very aspirational for a lot of people. But I'm saying that a lot of organizations first need to go down the other route to say that, okay, let's make those movements possible where it is most likely to, enable success. And therefore, having those skill inventories, I think, is extremely important. We're seeing this across a lot of our clients, across sectors, who are investing in creating those as a real foundation for creating that skills-based organization today. So very, very critical.
Definitely.
For a software company, the man-hours is money, right? So they definitely maintain that, try to do that. It is more important for manufacturing, EPC, business to build that, because otherwise you will be losing on it.
Definitely, sir. So I came across this abbreviation of a 3D model, which basically says that I need to have the design for building the robustness in the data. Then I need to map out by diagnosing where everybody's skill sets lies. and then I will be able to develop them further, right? But is that so easy to just say that it'll be like that equation to solve for? Or are there more challenges which in real world exist? Because I know technology, sir, is going to be leading it from the front because you have so many engineers, software engineers available in-house to do so. But in an organization like construction or for services sector, is that easily available?
All right, no, I'll take that. I'll take that. See, so listen, so we also work for 2 large EPC companies around the globe and the largest. The challenge is not, see, the very trick lies in who is motivating the start. Who is motivating the initiate, or who's initiating this whole process? If it is the employee, then you have it right. Because then you are saying, I'm putting my stake on the ground and saying, I want that job, and I will do everything to be successful in that job. If it is the company only pushing and saying, nahi, yahi tera career move hai, you go and do this. He says, no, I don't want this career. He says, no, but this is what is written in your career plan. That's the first thing. The second thing also is, what most organizations falter is they do the upskilling very well, but they don't then post the person into the new job. The moment you upskill a person, make him or her ready for the world, and keep him or her in the same job, you're bound to lose. Because that aspiration you first ignited, and then you said, you doused it by saying there is no job available. So similar thing happens in women leadership programs and other programs. So I'm just saying the first thing that you do when you upskill is make sure that there are jobs available in the upskilled area for that person. And I think that is the biggest challenge that most companies today face.
Very well said. And in terms of banking, I think so there's layers,
Layers.
so many layers, right? So wouldn't that become that much more difficult?
Sometimes it also helps. But going back to the question and to add to what he said, so with us, when you do the performance evaluation, you also ask the person, what is your personal development plan? What is it the manager feels, or what is the individual wants to do further, or what are the roles that gets further? This gets picked up as a part of the earlier program that I mentioned, which is iGrow, but in between there is a process, which is the hypo and the star process, which gets picked up from that, where you have basic certain criteria and ratings with that aspirations, where you connect that what job a person wants to do. Then you allocate a person the kind of course or the learning. And this is not only at a level, but it goes right up to the stakeholder or the senior management level, where then it gets decided whether the person becomes a critical resource, whether becomes a fungible resource, whether he can take up and one layer up as an HOD or one level down as HOD, and what is the process. So those are the certain assignments which happen. But the start, of course, has to be from the employee. Even for education or even from anything. I mean, when we are kids also, it's how much you can do or how much you want to do and how much you get pushed
Correct.
for. So the start has to be from an employee if he has to want something. And to add, correctly highlighted, you can't just push somebody and say, abhi tum itna kar lo, then we don't have anything back for you. Because then he's lost. And it's somewhere that place where he finds himself at nowhere. Because I wanted to do this, I did this, and now now you don't have it. I was doing my job nicely. You pushed me to my passion. I learned it, but now I don't have a job. So I think technology, yes, but an employee needs to push it. There has to be a platform created for the employee to do that, but there has to be a willingness and the agreement from the top that you will give him where that is. So it has to be cascaded from the top to give those employees if you're upgrading them for that piece.
Very well said. So I think so what I'm just hearing from the panel today is that we are in the right direction of having those kind of data points available to us. But it's very, very much imperative that we have a robust system in-house available wherein we can see that, okay, or at least predict that these kind of jobs will come forth. And therefore, do we have the skills available in-house, and how fast can we upskill, right? I've run out of questions for today because I had planned for some elements, but I would love to have a lengthy conversation on this parameter. And I think so before we just end today's conversation, if I can request one anecdote for the audience to take back from each one of you, please.
And I'm going last now.
So,
Learning is a continuous process. Please provide enough opportunity. Look at it as an investment.
lovely. Thank you.
I'll go
Ryan.
next, I think. So, just to pick up the last point about the platform, the ability to do this at scale, because I think that's where, in smaller buckets, in smaller numbers, I think it's all doable.
Yes.
The challenge is really in how to do it at scale. And now we've got opportunities to actually deploy learning platforms that allow us to do a lot of what you talked about, so identification of future skill sets. How are roles changing, between the way traditionally they were looked at versus what's next, and therefore what are the skills, competencies that are required. So AI can help you do that even today, to on a large scale. It can then help you map those to roles, allow for assessments to happen, and allow for learning journeys to be curated on a mass customized basis. So there are opportunities to do that. We ourselves have our own tool called Spot Mentor that helps organizations do that. And I think really that is the way forward for organizations, because that's the only way they can manage the pace of change and doing this at scale to enable a future ready workforce.
I can give an example for this. We have different levels of managerial, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And for each, we have identified the level of set of competencies. And we have a very clear development center. We put them through that, identify the gaps. We have a curated program for them and specific competency-based programs. So in their own interest, they look at it, prepare an IDP and move towards that. So it's very religiously done at every level.
So here is where I'm going to differ from these two, okay? See, it's great to have tools to determine what the person is best fit in. But the biggest thing that one has to have is look for that passion and a wild card who can be successful. In all our processes in HR and the people function, we should never, ever forget the wild card. And at Tech Mahindra, we always say technology is an enabler, but movements of truth are human.
Lovely.
And therefore, in all the processes that you do, if somebody is passionate and still doesn't have the skill set of the resume, don't write that person off. Sometimes you will realize people are successful not because of a resume and their skill sets, but also because of their determination, passion, and the people they are. And I think that's what you bet on.
I don't think we were saying something very different. You've got to have platforms that enable at scale. But as he said, you've got to ensure that whatever you do, you put humans at the center. And that's our, as EY, that's the way we look at any large transformation that you need to drive in the organization. Whether it is tech-enabled, whether it is a business model change or an operating model change, the humans at the center is what really continues to bring that human element front and center into everything that you're doing. And I think that's absolutely critical. So therefore, enabling you not to lose those wild cards. I like that term. That's a lovely term.
That's my takeaway for the day.
Same thing I said, look at it as an investment.
Just to take that wildcard entry and to add to it, but I would say putting more the employee at the center. It is the individual at the center. It is your life, your learning, your career. Don't let organizations decide that. Please be the enabler for yourself. And organizations can provide platforms, support for you to grow. But it is us who has to take the first step. So that's it.
Lovely. I think so. I'm really, really excited for the near future because these are exciting times to be in, to see how technology enables us, how we collect data and make use the most of it. But yet, as rightly said by the entire panel, we are human beings in the end. We need to take that charge and move it forward. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.